15 years ago, during a spring break visit to my parents' house from college, I found myself drawn to the window of my old bedroom late one night. Across the street, nestled in the shadows, stood the home of our neighbors, Justin and Sally. In the dim glow of the streetlights, I could make out the silhouette of a man and a woman engaged in a heated argument. It was Justin and his wife, Sally, their voices carrying through the stillness of the night. This wasn't unusual. They argued often, but something about this particular altercation felt different. The air was thick with tension, and a sense of unease settled over me as I watched, unable to tear my eyes away from the scene unfolding before me. Justin clung to his wife's throat, his fingers tightening like a vice. From my window, I could only catch glimpses of the struggle, but it was clear that both Sally and Justin were fighting against each other. Frozen in shock, I watched as the commotion eventually subsided, with Sally ceasing her resistance and Justin's screams falling silent. My father's room was just across my room, and I couldn't help but wonder how he hadn't been awakened by the noise. Yet it was my father who eventually entered my room. "Time for bed, son," he said wearily. "Seems like the neighbors are at it again. Don't peer through the window. It's not right." Fear gripping me, I mustered the courage to speak up. "Dad, something's wrong this time. Justin was strangling Sally," I explained, my voice trembling. My father merely smiled in response. "Is that all?" he asked casually. As my father and I peered out the window towards Justin's house, everything appeared calm. "Now off to bed," my father insisted, and left the room. As I turned back to the window, I caught sight of Justin staring back at me from the house opposite. A shiver ran down my spine as a wave of fear washed over me. Behind him stood a shadowy figure, the long hair marking her as Sally, his wife. Relief briefly flickered through me at the sight of her, alive and seemingly unharmed. Yet, the encounter left me unsettled, and I crawled into bed, haunted by the image of Justin's piercing gaze. Despite my exhaustion, sleep eluded me until the first light of dawn. The following morning over breakfast, I recounted to my mother the events of the previous day, but my parents showed little concern for Justin. His home seemed to be a constant hive of activity, with a steady stream of unfamiliar faces, leaving us perplexed about his occupation. Meanwhile, his wife, Sally, garnered fame as a fortune teller, matching her husband's notoriety. Their frequent arguments and the constant commotion emanating from their residence had worn on our patience, prompting us to hope fervently for their eventual departure through a sale of their property. As my mother and I stepped out of the house, we spotted Justin emerging from his car, his clothes stained with dirt, and heading home. Suspicion already lingered in my mind about this man. I turned to my mother and voiced my unease. "See, something doesn't sit right with this man. I wouldn't be surprised if he's harmed his wife and concealed it." Despite her dismissal, my mother, visibly perturbed, couldn't entirely brush off my words. Throughout the day, we intermittently observed their house, noting a notable absence of activity. Unease settled within me, prompting thoughts of contacting the authorities, yet lacking any tangible evidence held me back. The uncertainty surrounding Sally's well-being compelled me to consider approaching their house, perhaps by simply knocking on their door, in a quest for answers. Eventually, I persuaded my mother to engage in a pretextual visit, suggesting she inquire about a recipe, something innocuous, to initiate a conversation with the neighbors. I reasoned that it might provide an opportunity to glean information discreetly. With a hesitant nod, my mother agreed, and we proceeded to their door. As my mother initiated her inquiry, Justin answered the door, and to my immense relief, Sally appeared behind him. A wave of simultaneous surprise and joy washed over me, grateful that our worst fears had not materialized. As we made our way back home, my mother chuckled and gently chided, "My dear son, what wild adventures you lead me on. Well, at least we came away with a cake recipe." With a teasing tone, she cautioned, "Let's not entertain such outlandish thoughts again." Despite the dim visibility that evening, a nagging certainty lingered within me that Justin had indeed harmed Sally, possibly by strangulation. Doubts crept in, wondering if my mind was merely playing tricks on me, but the fear gnawed at me nonetheless, leaving me deeply unsettled. Entering my room, I hesitated to flick on the light, and in the dimness, I caught sight of a woman peering at me from the window of the house across the street. Despite the distance between us, Her gaze sent a shiver down my spine, freezing me in place. A sudden sensation of someone rushing past me, as through a strand of their hair grazed the napes of my neck, sent a chill through me. Whirling around, I found nothing but empty space. In an instant, the tranquility shattered as the sharp sound of breaking glass and raised voices pierced the air. My father's urgent cries spurred me into action, and I raced downstairs to find him clutching his injured hand, blood seeping from a deep cut caused by the shattered window pane. Thankfully, the injury wasn't severe, but the unexpected chaos left us all shaken. As the days slipped by, I found myself glancing at Justin's house more frequently, searching for any hint of unusual activity. Eventually, a subtle change in their routine caught my attention. Justin and his wife seemed to venture out together less often, and their habit of taking out the garbage daily had dwindled to every 2 to 3 days. This shift was evident in our shared street bin, which now took longer to fill. Even during rare encounters with Justin returning from the market, I noticed he carried fewer bags than usual, a sign of decreased household activity. Moreover, the steady stream of visitors to their home had dwindled, leaving an eerie sense of desolation in its wake. It was as if the once vibrant house now harbored a ghostly presence. The urgency to uncover the truth grew within me, fueled by the unsettling atmosphere permeating not only the house across the street, but also our own home. Meanwhile, tension simmered between my parents, a stark departure from the harmonious past. The unexplained shift in dynamics mirrored the inexplicable changes occurring in Justin's household, fostering an unsettling sense of shared misfortune. It felt as though the ominous aura emanating from the house opposite was casting its shadow over our lives as well. One restless night, the incessant ticking of the clock roused me from sleep, its hands frozen at 3 a.m. Startled, I glanced towards the open doorway of my room, where a young girl stood, her laughter echoing eerily through the silent house before darting downstairs. Terror gripped me, and I cried out in alarm, prompting my father's concerned voice to pierce the darkness as he awoke. Unable to articulate the strange occurrence, I was left speechless, a sharp, burning sensation throbbing in my hand as though scratched by unseen claws. Amidst the unsettling stillness, the glow of lights emanated from Justin's house, drawing my attention to the window. There, I caught sight of Justin making his way from our residence to his own, clutching what appeared to be a small shovel. A sense of foreboding compelled me to investigate further, and grabbing a flashlight, I descended the stairs, my mind racing with apprehension and unanswered questions. As I surveyed the surroundings with trembling hands, the soil near the boundary wall of our house bore telltale signs of disturbance. With a mix of dread and determination, I probed the earth with a stick, unearthing a parcel wrapped in cloth. Unraveling its contents revealed a chilling discovery. Fragments of bone, clumps of soil, and oily rags concealed within. Fear gripped me as the implications sank in, shattering any illusions of safety and leaving me trembling in the darkness. When I told my father what happened, he wasted no time in knocking on Justin's door the next day. Justin and his wife Sally greeted us at the door. My father explained, "My son witnessed something last night, and you were at our doorstep." Sally responded skeptically, "Is that even possible? Your son must have seen something mistaken." Her piercing gaze sent shivers down my spine, seeming to bore into me and haunting my thoughts. Despite my lingering unease, my father was convinced, and we left, returning home. I struggled to make others understand, but I knew deep down that this was far from normal. Determined to uncover the truth, I resolved to enter the house that evening. Sneaking out to the garden, I cautiously approached Justin's home. Suddenly, I spotted Justin smoking by the rear window, which was wide open. I waited patiently as he finished his cigarette and departed momentarily. Anticipating his return to shut the window, I summoned all my courage, slipped through the open window, and concealed myself. Inside, I was met with eerie whimpers emanating from the darkness. As I inched closer, my heart seized in horror as I witnessed Justin on his knees, pleading to a towering, shadowy figure with a face as dark as night. "I sacrificed my wife for you," he begged desperately, his voice trembling with fear. The room was cloaked in darkness, obscuring my vision, yet the chilling presence before him responded in an incomprehensible tongue. Overwhelmed with terror, I retreated slowly through the window, returning to my room where I remained until morning, too shaken to speak or even look out the window. The following day, an ambulance arrived at Justin's house, bearing grim news. Justin had suffered a fatal heart attack. His demise marked the end of the harrowing events that had plagued us. Despite psychiatrists dismissing my experiences as mere figments of imagination, I found solace only in nightly prayers, fervently hoping that those malevolent entities would never again cross my path. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for similar content.